Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Tower of Babbl podcast. As always, I am Julian Mush. I'm joined by Jeremy Cozier,
Hello.
and it's been way too long. Apologies to all the TOB fans who've been waiting for another numbered episode. This is episode 182, if you're keeping count. We have been hard at work on the Star Wars content, and Jeremy's been hard at work raising a child. So that's been kind of using up a lot of the time. Not to make excuses or anything, but that's our excuse. That being said, this episode I think is overdue for a couple reasons because obviously there's the DC stuff, and by the DC stuff I mean the he waited till the very last day of January to announce, which is funny, and we'll talk about that as well. And there's obviously we've been watching The Last of Us as well, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And this should be a fairly tight episode as I've got to run to hockey shortly after this. So we'll squeeze in as much of that stuff as possible. If there's some time left over, I have a bone to pick with Netflix. And so we'll talk about that a little bit as well if there's time. Before we get into that, I will just quickly mention a couple things. We revamped the Patreon tiers. If you want to help support the show, you can go to towerofbabblepodcast@gmail.com. And for now, as little as $2.50 USD per month, you can get access to our Discord channel and ad-free episodes. Or you don't have ads in our episodes now, but that may change. So, get on that bandwagon now and get access to the Discord. That's a new tier. We've been operating at the $5 film club tier for most of the time we've had a Patreon, and that's still there. If you want to get access to our monthly film clubs for another $2.50, you can join for $5. And this month we're going to be reviewing Jackie Brown, the Quentin Tarantino film. Last month we did the is it fair to call it a classic, Jeremy? The Saint.
Yes, correct.
The Val Kilmer classic.
Yeah, it's part of Val Kilmer's story career. It's a must-see Val Kilmer movie, I think.
Is it a must-see? Okay, all right.
I mean, name 5 Val Kilmer movies right now.
I can't even name 5, Jeremy. You're right.
Yeah, exactly.
You're absolutely right.
But the actor, of his importance. So it's cool to dive into his catalog. And what better movie than a kind of a James Bond ripoff?
And I think that's the most generous way to put it. Anyway, that was last month. If you join now, so for the next till the end of March, I believe, end of April, we're doing a promotion where if you join for $2.50, you'll get access to the $5 tier content, the film club content, as well as the back catalog content. So you can go back and listen to any of the year's worth of monthly film clubs we've done. There's some gems in there. I recommend. What would you recommend, Jeremy? Days of Thunder. That's a good one.
Yeah, right? That one usually comes to mind. Another one of my picks.
Yes. There's been others. We did Die Hard for a Christmas movie last year, but we've also done other Christmas movies if you're in the mood for that. There's lots of good quality movies in there. There's some less good ones in there too. Just to be
how many have we done? Like at least 100 or still or under?
No, Jeremy, no.
50?
No. Well, there's 12 months in a year. We've been doing it for 3 years, so it's got to be at least 36, right? I think it's 3 years we've had the Patreon going, maybe longer. So I would say minimum 36 is where we're at, maybe more. There's a good number in there.
Nice.
Okay. And again, anyway, if you can't support us financially, that's totally fine. You can do so by supporting us in other ways, like leaving us a review on iTunes and other places like that, wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow us on Twitter at Tower Babblecast, Facebook.com/TowerBabblecast, and head over to our website, towerbabbl.ca. That had a slight tweaking. I've done some slight changes there. You may or may not notice. And that you'll find everything that we do there, including all the Star Wars content that we've been putting out, covering the Bad Batch week to week. We're going to be covering The Mandalorian week to week. That's coming up right away. That's exciting. Season 3 just around the corner. We also did all of Andor. Great show. Jeremy doesn't seem to think so, but we'll get him. We'll bring him around on that eventually. anyway, that's all the preamble. We don't have time to get into any more small talk, Jeremy. Stop chatting my ear off about all the things you're doing during the day. All right, we got to get into this. We've got a lot to cover and not a lot of time. So we're going to be talking about the DC slate. Now, don't be confused. This is not the DCEU. At least not for one. At least maybe for one more movie, and then it's not. Now this is just the DCU, right? That's the way that they've framed it. This was an announcement that came from James Gunn about 2 weeks ago. We hadn't had a chance to cover it, and I've been really wanting to kind of deep dive into it. I don't think there's gonna be necessarily anything from in terms of like hot takes out of this, but I think it needs to be discussed, considering this main show has turned into a kind of like a DC watch, like a funeral watch, kind of watching the ship go down. And this is obviously something that's good news, potentially exciting. There's definitely some exciting announcements in there. Maybe some less exciting announcements for people as well, but we'll talk about it. So there's also the Flash trailer that dropped with the Super Bowl this last weekend. We'll cover that as well. All right, let's get into this. I'm going to read. Well, I'm not going to read. I'm just going to reference this IGN article that's called "Everything Announced During the James Gunn and Peter Safran Big DCU Reveal." Jeremy, while I pull this up, first blush on your thoughts coming out of that announcement.
Well, I mean, there's so much to unpack there, but if we're just gonna look at what the slate is in and of itself, just hearing the Superman, right, just being the kind of the kickstart to what this DCU is, and the movie getting its title, right, Superman Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
James Gunn says he's currently writing it. It's just cool knowing that this is coming out in 2025. I think they said, and it's going to be a nice
quick turnaround if you can.
A nice fresh take on the character, a younger take, obviously on Clark Kent Superman here when announcing that Henry wouldn't be back. He wasn't fired; he just wasn't rehired.
I think his exact words were. I think his exact words were, Jeremy, that he was dicked around.
Yeah, he said that as well. Yeah,
around, which is
a lot
funny.
of great James Gunn quotes throughout all of this, and he's having fun debunking things on Twitter at the same time. And like you said earlier, waiting until the very last day of the month.
That's such a troll move to me, because like, remember, I feel like it was like the beginning of the month, and people were like, "We still haven't heard anything yet. This is bullshit. He's gonna pull a fast one on us." And then he waited to the very last day. And part of me just thinks that like they literally just wanted to take as much pot. Like he's like, "Shit, we said January, okay, so we need to use as much of this time as possible."
Like a lot of things were playing out during this month. A lot of news was breaking, a lot of rumors surrounding the DCEU and certain actors, a lot of announcements, the fallout of Black Adam, a lot of and with Zaslav and WBD, and James Gunn was kind of just sitting there, kind of knowing what was already happening, but we were all still in flux and guessing, right? What was the actual hierarchy of the DC universe going to look like, and who would be?
Has the hierarchy of power changed, Jeremy?
It has officially changed. We never we basically just covered that these two guys, James Gunn and Safran, were co-heads of DC Studios, the answer to Marvel, what Marvel's been doing. Yeah, and picking someone who was on that side of things, right? Who's gonna be wrapping his Marvel trilogy with the Guardians.
There's a really kind of like nice poetry to this whole thing, because of course Kevin Feige, he learned his craft studying under the Superman, the original Superman movies, right? And with Richard Donner, and so it's kind of coming full circle. And then he started the Marvel Studios and changed the world, and now James Gunn came up through that same system, and then now is kind of shepherding his own DC universe. I don't know. There's a little bit of
and then really
there that
looking at what was going on before and comparing it to what he was in, and really trying to right that ship, mining the mint or whatever he was, however he put it before.
whatever weird sayings he had in there.
Yeah.
It's nice that we have. I kind of like the idea of naming the phases. So
Right.
what do we get
Gods
out
and
of Marvel?
monsters.
It's just numbers, right? Phase 1,
Mhm.
phase 2. What are we in phase 5 now, right? For
Yeah.
MCU. And this is kind of fun because now it's a little bit more creative, I guess, than just numbers. So yeah, gods and monsters, like you said. This is a phrase that we've heard bandied. If you're a DC fan of the comics or the animated movies, or less the movies, but I feel like those two previous things, like I said, more so. There are just certain phrases that DC reuses over and over and over and over and over again, right? Like, what's another one? Well, obviously the reference to the number 52 that's used over and over and over again. Hence the new 52, crisis. The term crisis, of course. I think they're they're reusing pieces, because I think their most recent crisis is Crisis on Infinite Black Earths or something like that, or Dark Earths in the comics. So that's like reusing a previous name and just adding dark to it. So that's interesting. But another one that's like, what's the Batman, Superman, like bestest friends or whatever, super friends, and other like those types of phrases are reused all the time. Gods and monsters is one of them. I feel like more recently, coming out of around the time of the New 52 era. And I think it's an interesting choice. I mean, what's your thoughts on kind of this? Obviously it says a lot. When you think of gods and monsters, the first things that come to mind are Superman, Wonder Woman, and their kind of key villains, which are also typically gods and or monsters. Batman's usually less, when you're thinking of DC stuff, Batman's almost always front and center. But when you say gods and monsters, Batman typically takes a back seat to that, unless you consider him a monster. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think it's cool to plot it out in terms of chapters or phases here. Giving it that title is pretty cool. I mean, that title it just seems more intense or more dramatic, or uh, more attached to something like Injustice or something.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe even more like the Snyderverse and kind of what that represented.
Yeah, that's true too. That's a great point.
In terms of what they're offering here with like Booster Gold and um, you know, the Batman and Robin movie and a
Sure.
Supergirl movie. But it's just a very it's simple, right? Because that's what these characters. There's both versions of these characters in all these stories, gods and monsters. So
yeah, and I think it's also kind of been the way that DC has looked at their stable of characters in comparison to, I think that people have made this comparison before, so this is not new, but it's the idea that Marvel's characters always felt more grounded to reality, whereas DC's characters sometimes felt more fantastical. The Superman's powers are so immense, he might as well be a god, right? And this is obviously something that you mentioned before that the Snyderverse explored.
yeah.
So
which is
that's
probably which is clearly not the way Gunn is gonna go with his Superman. Like, it's not gonna be like a god in question or anything like that, or what
you think
that
there's gonna be
means.
less Jesus poses from this new
like
Superman?
he literally just like he just wants to really focus on just his inherent nature of just being good. Like,
I think that's
that's
the
it.
right.
Like,
I think that's the right call. I think. Listen, say what you will. I think we all liked Henry Cavill as Superman.
Yeah.
He definitely has the look for it. His performance is underrated, for sure.
And unfinished, right? Because the whole purpose of the Snyderverse was to have that 5-movie arc that wasn't necessarily the answer to the MCU, but was its own mythological take, journey, adventure that incorporated every character, especially Batman, and forming the Justice League and whatnot. So that was just never fully realized. So people just kind of, well, it's not my Superman because he's not there yet, essentially. So it's just unfortunate, obviously, looking at this slate, being excited for it, that other part of it, officially coming to an end. But yeah.
Yeah, coming to an end in a kind of exciting way that really actually pays a lot of homage to Superman in that Flash trailer, and that it will be in the Flash movie. So that's interesting. We'll get to that in a little bit. What do you make of this idea that this is going to be an interconnected series of properties between movies, television, animation, and video games. So one of the things that I've seen a lot bandied about is that it's bad idea. Why would you bring the video games into this? It makes it difficult. I mean, my first answer to that is that that's how Star Wars is doing it, and Star Wars is doing it just fine. So, I think there's plenty of opportunities to tell interesting stories in the video game world that can be interconnected with the movies. The idea that it can't be done or it's too difficult, I just, let's put it this way: Rocksteady spent, how many years since Arkham Knight building a Suicide Squad game, basically rudderless, right? As DC and Warner Brothers, imploded on itself over that period, and what they produced, based on the screenshots we've seen, is a game that I don't think a lot of people want. So, I think the bar is pretty low. I mean, we've had really great superhero games. The Batman games, obviously, are
well, I
example
think
of that, but there's lots of opportunities.
Just to jump on that game, I think it was like some excitement around it, even though it felt a bit played out, or we've seen it like you said, it wasn't really in timing with what was meshing with the studio. Not necessarily Rocksteady's fault, but I think the lack of interest has come from the screenshots that have revealed like how
all the currencies and
the type of gameplay to expect and whatnot.
Yeah, people were holding out hope that it'd be more like
the Avengers game is done so, right? Like that's
they're basically folding that game, and the Suicide Squad is basically a replica of that game.
Yeah,
from a mechanical standpoint and from a system standpoint. So that's unfortunate, and obviously I'm simplifying it, but like what I'm saying is, this idea that this is too, he's biting off more than he can chew, I think is a little premature, because there's right now there's not a lot of Warner Brothers. I feel like there's a Wonder Woman game maybe in development somewhere, if I recall, but there's not a lot of properties that they couldn't explore in the video game world, and they certainly have a lot of untapped potential there. I mean, just their internal studios, they have Warner Brothers Montreal, which released that Arkham Knights game, which I think people generally are okay with, but it's just not blowing up in any big way. And then you've got Kill the Suicide Squad, which is coming out soon. And then after that, I mean, that's just internal studios. You can start tapping on third-party studios to start doing interesting things. But anyway, not to get too much into the game side of things, but I do think it is fascinating. I mean, again, just making a parallel to Star Wars, because this is what Star Wars is doing. They've tied in, the Jedi games are tied into the universe. We've got, Andor. All these things are all
animated projects.
Yeah, all the the Bad Batch is, one might say intrinsic to the Star Wars storytelling world, but most people won't see it because it's animation. So, but that ultimately, I think that gives you lots of flexibility. You can do so many interesting things. The one downside I have there is that the mention of animation coming into that is that animation has been one of the sole strong areas within the DC kind of how would you say it? Like, their movies have been hit and miss. The comics have kind of been up and down. The games, same thing. But the animated stuff has been consistently good to great for fucking 10 years, and I think some of the strongest stuff they did was the stuff that wasn't direct adaptations. In this case, I think it sounds like it's going to be a little bit of both, but requiring it to be tied in. And by the way, including needing to use voice actors who are going to play these characters in live action as much as they can. They said.
Also, those will be animated like HBO Max series type things, right? Whereas like these movies we've been getting that adapt certain comic lines, they're just like DC animated movies.
WB animation. It's unclear how those are going to be affected.
Yeah, if that is affected, that's an end of a multiple eras, essentially of those movies.
But, because James Timm was involved in those for a long time, and then he stepped away. But then like the quality stayed very high, I would say. And then there was a little bit of dip there when they right around when they were ending that kind of like connected universe thing that they were doing with the animated verse. And I think some of the movies.
I just rewatched All-Star Superman recently after all this news.
Oh yeah, nice, good call.
And then I just saw, I think it was Watchtower Database. They mentioned that it's getting a 4K re-release in like September, which is pretty cool.
That is nice.
Which is funny when these cartoons get the 4K re-release.
Yes,
like it's not that big of a deal, but like it is pretty. It is pretty crisp though when you do have that.
How much straighter of a line can that line be?
Yeah.
when
But
you're
with
doing
cartoons, it is
1080p.
kind of true though in certain
Yeah,
cases, right? Like it can look jaggedy.
sure.
Uh, so yeah, but like whatever. I collect them all. So
Yeah, I mean,
and they
it's
usually
about the boxes.
add new special features, which is why I pretty much buy those things, right?
It's actually wild how good those like that packaging it like between
Mhm.
the box itself, the quality of the animation,
And now with all
the
this talk of
special
physical
features.
media
Like
making a comeback, right? Like
you're just like you're
that's
just
what I say at
laughing.
least.
Yeah, you're just laughing. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's concentrate on the individual announcements. You mentioned off the top that the first and biggest one is a Superman movie being written by James Gunn, based on All Star Superman. Um,
Well,
Not
that's
entirely,
another
yeah.
cool thing is that when we announced all these things, James Gunn, really fighting for the comic side of all this stuff, mentioning comic books, storylines,
Yes, that's a good
uh,
point.
writers, and then DC they kind of tried to do that, like sell their books and stuff at the same
Hmm.
time when they're advertising certain things. And it looks like they're doing that again. I think even at the end of the Flash trailer, there's like an ad for like three graphic novels to purchase or
Yeah, by
whatever.
the Flashpoint
Yeah.
trade
But it's just
paperback.
awesome
Yeah.
seeing like, the architect, right, the co-lead, just basically mentioning comic books and then these movies that he's going to create.
Yeah,
So
because I think it's really cool because it's this creating this, I think, interesting. He comes from the Marvel space. We've seen how Marvel's done it. I think we've seen this, trying to replicate Marvel whole cloth is not going to work, right? So what can you do to do things a little differently? Okay, well, we'll do small things. We'll name the phases. That's a little fun little thing that we can do. Um, we'll call directly out to the comic book inspirations for these movies, right? And I think that's something that Marvel hasn't really done. They'll use things like Age of Ultron as a name, but it's not at all based on the comic series Age of Ultron, right? They just wanted the name, um, and they kind of do their own thing, and the inspirations come from all over, and it's kind of hard to pin it down. I kind of like this idea of just being very specific about this is our influence, this is what we're trying to replicate.
mhm.
And of course, when you're making a shift from medium between a comic book into a movie, not everything can come over one to one, and that's okay. But understanding, okay, the what are the influences from All Star Superman? What is it about that story that is influencing you? And he talked about those things, but I think that is in and of itself interesting and
Yeah, I
bold.
think
So yeah.
he narrowed it down to mostly for the characterization of Clark Kent slash Superman is
Yes, it'll be.
why he's kind of diving into those books and drawing inspiration for his story. And he said it's not an origin story; it's a younger Superman, Clark Kent. So we can expect, obviously, that dynamic and how he's switching back and forth. Uh,
Hmm.
Obviously, with Lois Lane, the Daily Planet, just really honing in on that era of Superman. I think will be pretty cool.
Yeah, early career, I guess. Yeah, I mean, we kind of touched on this before. Just what he's talking from the characterization standpoint, what he's talking about Superman is different from what we got from the Henry Cavill version of Superman, and um, for better or for worse, I think different is the right way to go about for this. I think trying to ape the Snyderverse, and kind of like take your own twist on it isn't gonna. I think that's a half measure. We've talked about how half measures are really not the solution here.
But they're still
So
kind of playing out, right, with the
uh
Flash movie,
I I know
which we'll
it's
get into
it's
after this,
so
I guess.
wild, but yeah, we will get into that. Okay, next we have Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. This is an
Movie.
adaptation of the. Oh, sorry. Yeah, is this a what did I call it?
No,
Uh,
I was just specifying. I didn't know if
oh,
you
okay,
did
yeah,
or
yeah.
not.
Because there's a series as well that he announced. That's
Oh.
true. That's a good point. This is a film, and Woman of Tomorrow. It's an adaptation of the Tom King comic book, which I have not read. But I think leaning into, I mean, obviously again with the Flash trailer, Supergirl is getting much more attention from DC, and they want, I think, bring Supergirl more into the kind of into the main fold is what it seems like anyway. And I think I'm okay with that. Um, and I say that not because I'm not a fan of Supergirl, but in the sense that we're getting a Superman movie, so this is not being done, instead of Superman. It's
Right.
being done, jointly with Superman. And I think one of the the best things you can do with Superman as a character is give him Kal-El as a sounding board, as someone who's of his, he's in the movies it's either it's Zod, there's another Kryptonian, but he's a bad guy, right?
Well,
or
back.
he can talk to his. Sorry, say that again.
He's back.
Yes, he is also back.
Unfortunately.
Or you've got like the hologram of his dad, right? And that's about it, right? Or you do some sort of timey-wimey BS. And when you bring Kal-El into it, I think you really create this really interesting dynamic where you have this touch point that Superman can use, because she was older than him when he was just a baby when he left, and she was of age. She actually remembers what Krypton was like. He can use
similar story, but obviously has different.
I think it just really creates a really interesting dynamic, and I think it really enhances the Superman story. It's two wholes are greater than the sum of their parts, I think, in this case. So I'm a fan of it. I don't know much about the comic it's based on, but what do you think about this announcement?
Yeah, I think it's cool. I think also with all this announcements and along with that 6-minute video of James Gunn, he mentioned the writers' room that they have. That's going to be kind of the architects of overseeing where all this goes. And Tom King, DC writer, is a part of this. He was also previously going to be a part of the New Gods movie with Ava DuVernay.
Oh, that movie that got canceled.
Yeah. Because he got a lot of notoriety for his Vision, or I think WandaVision was based a lot around his.
Oh, yeah, right, on his Vision comic. Yes, I remember
Vision
that.
comic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then he did a Mr. Miracle that I think I bought some issues of when it was.
Oh, that's cool.
When it was
Mr.
ongoing.
Miracle, an unexplored character, I feel like has a lot of potential. Yeah.
So he's done Batman. I think he did like a lot of pretty big Batman events. I think Jokes and Riddles was a big one.
The question is, Jeremy, does this writer's room have Jeff Johns anywhere near it?
No, it does not.
It does not.
The Jeff Johns era is dead,
over,
but we will see some remnants of it in the Flash, I believe.
Yeah, man, what a roller coaster of a journey that we held them in such high esteem for so long. With the Green Lantern
so did Kevin Feige. If you want to jump ahead slightly here, just on a tangent, like him, those were the two individuals, right? Kevin Feige laid out the groundwork,
right?
Jeff Johns has a similar story to him, not so much on the film side, but on the creative side in terms of being a writer and forming a lot of huge DC events that will for surely not be forgotten. I mean,
no, not at all,
anytime soon. So. And that just played out terribly.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that they were gonna try to adapt Blackest Night for the Flash on CW, if they were allowed to continue? Did you hear about that?
I did not.
It would have been a really weird. I mean, every time they adapt a non-Flash comic to do in that show is always a little wonky, but that would have been fun at least. I would have watched that. Okay. Anyway, that's anything else you want to say about Supergirl?
No, I just think the story they're adapting, I'm curious about it. I know it's been selling out apparently. A lot of books have been selling out from all these announcements, but a new Superman movie, new Supergirl movie, pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the story that they were adapting is interesting. It's kind of like a little bit of a harder edge take on Supergirl, which I think is interesting. Essentially, if you're going to do like this really kind of like Boy Scout version of Superman, I think having that kind of dichotomy is interesting. Here's where it gets really exciting for me. Now, that's not to say I don't like Superman or I don't like Supergirl. I do, but when it comes to DC stuff, it's Batman and then everything else, right? And that can be frustrating for a lot of people because I think for DC, that's also how they see it a lot of the time. Take that for what it's worth. Yeah, exactly. There's like how many Batman books usually? There's at least 2 at any given time, but there's usually more. Well,
even DC movies, right? Like there's
the Joker.
There's so much Batman.
The Batman, where they announced that they're getting the Batman 2, Part 2. It's
Dark
fancy
Knight
if
trilogy,
it's called Part
the Batman 90s movies, the Batman TV series.
That's right. At least 2 Batman in the Flash trailer that we keep teasing. So this is The Brave and the Bold, and I love this title. I've always thought it's a amazing. It's another one of those. By the way, it's another one of those. Greatest heroes is, by the way, is one of the other terms they like to use. But Brave and the Bold has been associated with Batman for a long time. There was a Brave and the Bold animated show.
Yeah, I
That
think
was aimed
I
at a
think that
younger
animated
audience.
show kind of owns this title.
You think?
In my opinion.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It was ran for a long time. Diedrich Bader, I think, voiced him. And this, again, a little bit of a younger audience, but a bit of a throwback to the '66 Batman. A little bit more wacky. They did stories with like Batmite and stuff like that. They had a really fun version of Aquaman that was very like self-absorbed, and it was anyway. It was. I thought it was quite good. I didn't see a lot of it, but the stuff that I did see was good. Either way, what I think when you're saying that they own that this term Brave and the Bold, I think it's because what comes to mind when you think of it is like a lighter tone, at least for me. And
but either way, what it signifies now is Batman and Robin.
Yeah,
it's just a snappier, snazzier way of saying Batman and Robin, which we've had that movie before in the '90s. We've had live action Robin, but this is going to be, which was
Holy Metal Batman.
I mean, which is no, Holy Rested Metal Batman.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm looking for.
But so here, he even announced who the Robin is. It's going to be Damian, which is a pretty cool choice.
Yes,
which is Batman's actual son. So this Bruce Wayne, Batman, Damian Wayne, Robin dynamic, which played out in I guess Grant Morrison's run, which I guess you're familiar with.
Unbelievable run, especially if you go. Okay, I would recommend. So I haven't read all of the Grant Morrison run. It's very long.
Yeah, we have a few of the graphic novels. I think. Yes. I think I might have lent you.
I'm sure I do. I can probably, but the one that I really enjoy is Batman Inc. Which is
really fleshes out the Batman family, right, and what they do,
it does,
how they work together.
Exactly, and it brings in the Talia of it all, which is of course is Damian's mom, Talia al Ghul. Here's the question, Jeremy? Are they rushing into the Bat family and starting with Damian with an established Bat family with Nightwing and all the rest, Batgirl, etc.? Or the answer is The answer is that officially yes, or is that just what you're thinking?
It has to be. I mean, James Gunn, he's bringing forth comic book, like that is key here, right? And there maybe some people are going to be a little cheesed by who the Batman and Robin are with this iteration.
Yeah, like, well, we barely got any chance to explore the Tim Drake of it all, or whatever.
If Damian is the Robin, and we're gonna go down that path, which I think is more fresh, a bit more exciting, a bit more edgy. There's a bit more.
It avoids the whole
with his family, right, with his mom and Roz. Like, there's just so much going on there.
Well, it avoids the issue of like a grown man like adopting a son as a ward, and like it's that weirdness.
But at the same time, if he is the Robin, you best believe that there was Robins before, and they are out in the wild, especially Dick, who will be
Richard.
A Nightwing.
Just kidding.
Who will be Nightwing, and he'll be operating on his own. Him and Batman will not be seen eye to eye, and that is what Damian will be going through with his father at this point in time in this Brave and the Bold movie, and it's going to be fire.
I think it's a really smart idea for a couple reasons. Okay, I think it's smart because, as you mentioned, the Damian Robin is the most compelling Robin we've had since Dick, right? It's like not even close.
It's the best dynamic.
Exactly. If it like you said, it fast forwards us into a place where we have established relationships with characters like Nightwing and Tim Drake. I kind of hope they hold on the Red Hood story, not because I would necessarily want to see it adapted, but I just feel like there's a lot of baggage there, that I don't feel like you need to address right away. The other thing that I like, of course, when you say the word Batman and Robin, I think of the comic book. I don't think of necessarily the movie right away. I think of the comic book run called Batman and Robin, which featured, interestingly enough, and there's a potential that you could do this even if you really wanted to start in a really bold, if I can use that term from the name, way, is you could start with having, technically, if you wanted, not Bruce as the Batman, and have Dick be Batman, because that's what happens in the Batman and Robin comic book, and there's a really interesting dynamic. Now, I wouldn't do that first. Yeah, I wouldn't do that first, but I think that it opens the door up for that. And the Bat, it's so wild, is the Bat family as a term feels so new to me. I just don't like. I hear people use it regularly as like just a thing that everyone knows, and it just doesn't feel like it's been around that long as a concept for it to reach that. But I guess it has been. But it's just wild to me how quickly it's been.
There's just so many Gotham Knights, if you will.
Yeah,
right. Like there's just all these characters taking on the mantle, and the way Batman Inc. did it, and how they work together, and Batman being the leader, and then also battle for the cowl when Batman is dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And all those characters vying for it and trying to figure things out. And there's the dynamic with what the mantle of Robin is and who's had it and what that's done to them, and that's just so fascinating, like where all these Robins go, and how Batman deals with that. And now it's going to be his actual son. It's just so much more intriguing than
there's just so many more like
right
layers of story you can explore here, and like characterizations and emotional depths, and it's just so much more interesting. And they're saying it's going to be a little bit more lighthearted, which I think is an interesting. It's definitely something new that we haven't seen since the 90s, right? And obviously you want to avoid going the George Clooney route, but there is somewhere in between that I think you could find. I would say go back and watch the first few Batman animated movies from that interconnected web that started around the same time as the New 52. That comic, or so those movies, the animated movies, introduced Damian, like whole cloth new, and then their dynamic plays out over a few movies, and I think it's very good encapsulation of those same stories that they're adapting here, and worth a revisit, I think, in the light of this news. I just think it's great to we've been talking for so long about like why haven't we been able to incorporate the Robin mythology into the movies in a successful way? Even the Snyderverse danced around it with having the Joker, or sorry, the Joker having killed Robin already in those movies, right? So there's just so much missed opportunity, I feel like, in this space, and I'm just excited for like regular quote unquote normies to kind of be exposed to this this very rich and kind of layered dynamic that the Bat family brings that we haven't really been able to explore on screen. Okay, so next up we have Swamp Thing and the Authority movies. Obviously, so here's the thing. People talk about the Swamp Thing run as being like, in the comics, being like this seminal piece of work. The Alan Moore run being this seminal work. And, I'll own it. I have not read those. but I
watched the Swamp Thing show.
I did. I haven't done that either.
Which is funny because you hear Swamp Thing, it's gonna be a movie, yeah, it's cool, but we kind of just got it in a series, and the series was praised but canceled. And part of the praise was because of the live action nature of it, and like the prosthetics and the makeup and like the look of it. And it was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. But I never really dove into that series or finished it. I don't know if you did.
So there's a full first season, right? You can go and watch that.
I'm pretty sure,
season. Yeah, interesting. I'd like to. If the DC Universe streaming app still existed, I would be able to do that. But alas, another thing lost to time. Generally speaking, like, I like the concept of Swamp Thing. They explore the idea of the green and the red. The green being this interconnected, I guess, universe of a sub-universe of life, connected life, and all life runs through the green, right? It's and then you have the red as this interconnected sub-universe of death, and I think those two concepts alone, there's like endless mining you can do of story content. If you want to just adapt the Alan Moore stuff straight, whole cloth, I think you could get away with that and everyone would be quite happy with it. I think there's a lot of ways you can go about it. For whatever reason, it doesn't excite me in the same way that, quote unquote traditional superhero comics do.
That's fair.
Because this is more, it just feels more supernatural to me,
Which is a cool part of the DC,
Yes.
universe and a huge corner of it. It also lends towards like the gods and monsters kind of chapter naming.
Yes, of course.
And then
the titular monster, one might say. Yeah.
And then I guess the authority, like that, man, like I know nothing about that. I think you tweeted something how you're interested in it.
I am.
Just kind of looking at the log line of it. But it just looks like it's more like
It's the
allegories
boys.
to other
yeah.
things. So it's like I don't know if I want that in my DCU, but I guess we
like
have no choice. So
here's what I think is happening, right? I think he's doing this because it gives him a chance to explore those concepts in a way that maybe not as intensely as The Boys is exploring it, right? On Amazon Prime, a show that I think we both really very much enjoy and very well crafted, and is clearly an allegory to the DC universe in a lot of ways. But maybe what's happening here is James Gunn is using this as an opportunity to bring in a version of the Avengers, a grounded quote unquote version of the Avengers into the DCU, and lets him kind of play, because the Justice League carries its own baggage, right? Not just from the movie, but just inherently in its concept of including actual gods like Superman, or actual, other literal actual gods in other cases. But this case is just a little bit different take on some of those same ideas without the baggage of the Justice League, and I think that's fair.
it's also a movie, right? Like,
Yeah.
how does this fare? How does this sell? What is the budget? I mean, we'll get into the Elseworlds whole tale of this, but I think he said something along the lines of the quality of the Elseworlds needs to be like very high bar, unlike the
Right.
DCU content,
Which can be shitty.
which it doesn't. It sounds like you can extrapolate from that. Okay, well, those can be shitty, quote unquote. But
right.
So because you gotta imagine, like you can't really fit the bill for the Authority movie in a traditional sense of like, okay, it can be 200 million plus. Like it needs to be extremely low budget, I imagine. But then then it needs to just be good, and then word of mouth, and then just on its own merit.
Yeah, because this is based on Wildstorm characters, which I guess is a label that DC
none
acquired.
of these characters are recognizable,
but they have cool ideas. I think they have let me see if I can explore this.
But then it's quickly. James Gunn. Well, I brought forth the Guardians. You didn't know who they were.
Yeah, I mean, and you know what? Fair enough. I think that's actually a legit fair thing to say. Here, let me go see if I can find
I think it's a little over the top, but
I'm just trying to find their power, who the people are. Okay. So Jenny Sparks, the spirit of the 20th century, is the founder of the Authority and its leader in the first volume. Almost a century old when we first meet her, Jenny was born in England at the turn of the 20th century, is fated to die at the end of it. Her powers manifest in the ability to control electricity, although she is also essentially ageless. Throughout her long life, she's crossed paths with and influenced many of history's most famous figures. She's sort of like a super heroic Forrest Gump, although latter never encouraged Hitler to take up politics like Sparks did. So that's funny. Then there's Jack Hawksmoor, the god of the cities, one of the most interesting superheroes in DC history. Jack is able to read the energy of entire cities, enabling him to communicate with them about what they and the people who inhabit them are feeling. These powers come from a strange experiment that he underwent as a child at the hands of futuristic beings.
Okay, but could this just be too late? Like, could this just be on the tail end of like the superhero genre and like people caring?
Just like the watch, or just like Watchmen was too early. This will be too late. I mean, c'est possible. It's possible. I just think the concept of these characters is interesting. I'm not going to go through anymore.
Yeah,
because we don't have time. But
I just think the standout is that there's like a Batman and a Superman character and they're gay or something like that, right? That's like
there's the Midnighter, Night's bringer of war, just a normal human being. He joins Stormwatch Black, the secretive version of the team that became the Authority. He has a husband. Midnighter gained his powers via medical enhancements. His abilities include super strength, super speed, rapid healing ability, and then I guess Apollo is the Sun King. Is one of the better known characters. This one, the one that feels like the most direct ripoff of Superman, right?
Yeah.
Apollo is essentially the Team Superman. Super strength, basically immortal. He can shoot solar beams out of his eyes. That's funny. Solar beams. Okay, sure. Anyway, so that's like, yeah, I guess so.
What was that? Jupiter was it Jupiter Ascending or something like that? There was like a superhero show.
Jupiter Ascending is a Wachowski movie, I believe.
Well, there's another like superhero movie with like Rousseau. Was it? He had like cool costumes, but like it just got forgotten about.
Oh, the Netflix one.
Is it Netflix?
Yeah, there's that Netflix one that was like had one season, and it was supposed to be like their version of The Boys, and it was just like the most rote shit you've ever seen. So boring. I don't remember what that was. Yeah, I don't remember either. That's a testament to its longevity, I guess.
But that's what this is kind of reminding me of.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it sounds cool, but like
it has to be done right.
Yeah. But that's cool, whatever.
That's cool, whatever, indeed. So we're going to get Creature. Yeah, we'll go through these a little bit faster. Creature Commandos, animated series written by James Gunn. Creature Commandos will be the first new show on HBO Max. It's an animated show written by James Gunn that's already entered production. The show will feature Rick Flag Sr., Nina Mazursky, Dr. Phosphorus, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, G.I. Robot.
Just another gang of misfits, you know.
How many gangs of misfits can he have? Is really the question.
Leaning into the monsters title again for the chapter.
Mm-hmm. I think it's funny that Weasel's going to make an appearance again. What a year for Weasel. So there's, I don't know. Anything else you want to say about that? I have nothing.
I don't know. I mean, hopefully people watch that one. I guess I don't know how they deem that a success or how it works.
Yeah, well, Jeremy, the question. That's a great question that, you know, I think we could pose to literally any streaming services. What do you consider a success? Because Netflix says they've never canceled a successful show. And the question, of course, from that is has anyone ever canceled a successful show? Yeah. And how would we even know? Because you don't release your numbers. We don't know if your shows are successful or not by any metric, because never mind your own, because you keep it secret. So, yeah, I mean, a little bit more transparency would go a long way in all this, in my opinion. But, you know, what do I know? I'm just a consumer being ripped off constantly. Okay, Paradise Lost. This one, I think, really throws me. I think this one might be like a Rangers of the New Republic situation, where, of course, that show got canceled because the lead got involved in, I don't know, that it's a whole other thing. But it just slowly disappeared off the Star Wars slate. This is a situation where, like, who is this for? Is the question, right?
Well, so this is bringing Wonder Woman to the into the content, but it won't star Wonder Woman though, right? Is that not what it's like? Before her time.
Paradise Lost is a Game of Thrones type story, and I think we would all be richer if we all got $1 every time that a creative referenced a Game of Thrones like anything. Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I like, all I want to say with, like, good luck with this. Like, hopefully you create this epic mini series Game of Thrones style Wonder Woman Themyscira thing. All I can say is good luck. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, okay, so hold on. Let's back up here. Paradise Lost will be set in Themyscira, which is home of the Amazons and birthplace of Wonder Woman. This drama will focus on the creation and politics of this all-woman society, something I think we've all been curious about. The events in Paradise Lost take place before Diana's birth. So Wonder Woman will not be in this movie, but her mom will be.
It's a series. It's not a movie.
Sorry, you're right, in this series. I just, like, I don't know how much we're dealing with a small island nation. I just don't know how much you can mine from this, but maybe they've got an idea here. I think Jeremy, you're right on. Good luck is right.
Yeah, I say good luck too, because I'm also coming from, like, what came before. What was our Wonder Woman before? Obviously, 1984 was a huge miss,
Despite some
but
wacky,
but in terms of the
absolutely
Snyder,
wacky performances by Pedro
yes,
Pascal.
but in terms of the Snyderverse and like and the Snyder cut, in terms of how the Amazons were handled and their portion and
Right.
whatnot, it's just so epic. And
I want to play
this
that guitar riff right
show,
now.
yeah, like this show just, and you're not even gonna have Wonder Woman in it. Like you
Yeah.
better capture the attention. You
Yeah.
better be as epic as Game of Thrones.
Just like,
So
again,
yeah,
who's it
that's
for? I just don't know who it's for, because it's like, Game of
well,
Thrones
if
is
you could
back,
focus
so
on Themyscira and that whole the Amazons and just like strong women, um, I think that's
yeah,
cool. I
it's
think
just a generic. It just feels like a generic fantasy story at that point. Then I just like, I
true.
don't know. I don't know what
Or you're
DC needs to bring
pandering.
into this. I don't think it's pandering either. I just think it's
No,
like, I just don't think there's a. I just don't know what the story is here, and obviously I'll hold my tongue until we get more
right.
information. But I just, on its face, it doesn't jump off the page as something that's like particularly interesting, and maybe that's because I'm a dude. But
Then we have
okay, so
Waller,
yeah, 3 additional
another
series for HBO
series
Max. Yeah, that's right.
and another DCEU crossover that doesn't necessarily make this DCU
It, uh, uh,
completely
yeah, uh
fresh and new
huh.
and starting from the
I know
ground.
people. So here's the thing: people were like, if you're gonna reboot everything, you better reboot Peacemaker 2, because otherwise that's not fair. That's basically the sentiment that I picked up
Yeah.
on from the internet. And it's like, well, I mean, he can just do whatever he wants. So he just did whatever he wanted. In this case, Peacemaker is coming back and will be brought into the, maybe there'll be some sort of Flashpoint repercussions that we'll see play out in
It's
Peacemaker.
fine. Like
That's
it's not
possible.
a Peacemaker season 2. It's
Yeah.
Waller will be at the forefront of the show and Team Peacemaker will be involved. That's
And there is a
fine.
Peacemaker season 2 coming. That's also
But
true.
it's not in chapter 1, so that means it's
Right.
probably not, it's years and years away.
Which
Waller
is
will have to
unfortunate.
conclude and the Waller will tease whatever the next Peacemaker show. That'll be the next
Right.
season of Waller essentially.
Right. It's gonna be like a Book of Boba Fett situation, which was like
Yeah.
half the
We're
Mandalorian.
bouncing between
Right.
characters. And then it's cool because at the end of it, this DCU will have a series on this character, a movie on this character. Like it'll just
Right.
be a tapestry that's all connected, like Marvel, because that's what everybody wants.
Yeah, and it'll feel a little bit more
Um,
organic, I feel like,
yeah,
coming out of that. Yeah. Um I love Peacemaker season 1. I think it's one of the funniest shows I've seen in a long time. It's got so much heart. And I think this is something that we've seen, of course, from almost every James Gunn property, just this like the ability to tap into the heart of the whole thing. But I'm just always so blown away by a show that is like has this like elite character that no one gives a shit about, and characters that you've never seen before, and making you not only like these characters but also like making sometimes the stakes just being like personal growth, and how satisfying that is, which is something that, by the way, Ted Lasso does really well as well. So like it is, it really works for me. And if I had to guess, I think the story of Waller as a series is going to be about Waller as a character growing into someone who's much more understanding of the human condition. We'll just put it that way, than her cold-blooded self that we're used to her being. That's where she's going to start. So anyway, I'm actually quite excited for that. I don't know, for you probably don't have as much interest, but I think it totally works for me. That brings us to, I think,
Booster
Jeremy.
Gold.
Is that what you
Another
want to go? Is that what
series.
you want to go through next? Okay, all
Well,
right.
where else
Booster
would you
Gold.
go?
I don't know. No, that's
We have
fine.
so
Booster
many
Gold.
series. That's the
Yeah.
last
No, there's one other
series.
one. There's another one that you're gonna want to talk about, I think.
Oh yeah, never mind. I said last because the last one shouldn't necessarily be a series. But yeah, Booster
Right.
Gold, it's a fan favorite. It's kind of a unique character, right?
Yeah.
Imposter syndrome as a
I don't know.
superhero.
I don't know anyone who I've never ever met who said that Booster Gold was their favorite character.
Well, I mean,
But
that's kind of a far. That's a like
like, if
okay,
no one's gonna say
that's not
that.
a metric.
You're saying no
Like
one would
I've
ever
never
say that.
met someone, but like whenever you in media, when Booster Gold is mentioned, maybe on a podcast or a
Right.
YouTube video, like there's always someone who's into comics who like knows about Booster Gold, and when you hear about Booster Gold, it's like that's kind of a
Fun
cool take.
concept. Yeah,
Yeah, fun
fun concept.
concept.
Mm-hmm. Of course. And
So
by the way, what is
that's
that
where we're
concept?
at.
He is a regular person from the future who uses future technology, goes back into the past to be a superhero.
Yeah, like for his own
Yeah,
benefit. But
for his own benefit.
then he still does the right thing, but he stumbles his way through it or something like
That's
that.
right. He's selfish by nature, but has a good heart.
Yeah.
Kind of the
And then I heard some fan casting. Was it Glenn Powell played Hangman in Top
Oh,
Gun?
that's a that is a
I thought that would be
great
like
casting. Holy
yeah.
shit.
That's like the one that
Absolutely
just
right.
clicks immediately right away because he's so charismatic.
His
Uh,
chin is
and
perfect.
his smile
Yeah,
and just like
yeah.
the emotion
Uh-huh.
behind that.
100%.
So that'd be fun.
That is a great Jeremy, thank you for telling me about that fan casting. That is so good. Now it's all I'm going to be rooting for that.
Well,
If
he's
that doesn't
also been fan
happen,
casted for Hal Jordan, which we'll get to
oh,
shortly
interesting.
after this one.
I guess that's feel like that's a little on the nose. You're like, whoa, who played a fighter pilot recently?
Yeah.
Seems a little on. Yeah.
Well, he was
anyway.
a fighter pilot in 2 movies, I believe. I think he
Yeah,
started in
that's
like
right.
the
In
World
another
War
one
One or 2
recently.
movie.
Yeah, that's right. No, it's during the. It's not World War II. It's the Korean War.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, it's called like Aces or something like that, but no one's seen it or heard of it.
I have. And it stars
yeah.
Kang the Conqueror.
That's right. What's his name? It'll come to me.
I always set you up, and you just never.
I just can never knock it down. What's his name? I know it, and then sometimes it drops away from me. I guess important to note Viola Davis will continue to play Amanda Waller, by the way.
Oh yeah,
which is good to. She's
cool.
great in that role. Okay, so let's talk about lanterns, Jeremy. I feel like so I'm sensing concern from you, but let me read this and like I just want to understand where it's coming from because this Lanterns is a true detective-like series, a show that you literally just talked about the other day, that follows intergalactic cops, starring by the way, of course, Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan, the two best Green Lanterns.
Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart.
What did I say?
Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan.
Oh, you're saying I should have said it the other way around. Okay. And I think that the element of concern, if I'm reading your mind, is that it's set on Earth and it's an Earth-based story. Is that the crux of it?
Well, I don't think I teased any of those notions, but
I just felt it coming through the mic, Jeremy.
No. So just going through the list, my concern was or is so we have what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 movies and 5 shows.
Something like that.
So the movies are 2 Superman movie, Supergirl movie, Batman and Robin movie, and then Swamp Thing movie and The Authority.
Right.
So my only concern or disappointment is like, okay, so like Lanterns couldn't get.
You guys couldn't find a room
bill.
for that. You're just not gonna give him you're not gonna give him a movie, eh? You just can't.
So Wonder Woman didn't get a movie, even though we were promised Wonder Woman content. It's getting the Game of Thrones show. It doesn't even have Wonder Woman in it.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's a series, and then Lanterns is relegated to a series. But initially, honestly, super excited. I thought, you know what, series is fair, especially if you're giving us Hal and John. We get more time. We get more hours to flesh that out. And then you want to go ahead and say True Detective inspired.
Right.
And then on top of that, they're kind of on the forefront of whatever mystery or evil is out there. They're kind of gonna be on that pulse.
Bridge. They're gonna be on the bridge to the
greater kind of overall Thanos, if you will, or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
That gets me going a little bit.
Yeah, Jeremy, that actually did raise my hairs on the back of my neck a little bit when you say that. Like, okay, they're like searching through they're getting clues, something big is happening.
They're doing their own thing, right? Obviously, we're gonna be introduced to the Green Lantern mythos in that world,
right?
But a big part of that is that cop, a police officer, precinct, space cop, sector, whatnot. That
Sector
just
2814,
I just love the fact. Yes, I just love that they're at the forefront. They're at the beginning, right? They see everything. They know what's coming. I just love that notion. And then for it to tie into the greater villain, later on, tease that is just super exciting.
Right. Yeah. I I don't disagree with you. I think you could really. I was concerned about the kind of being like. I feel like you're not really uh, 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 using the Green Lanterns to their fullest extent if you're just telling an Earth-based story.
I think
That's kind of the first
I think
feeling.
this is a safe choice here, right? It's not called Green Lantern, it's called Lanterns. They're just really gonna hone in on what that is. They're giving us
Yeah.
two huge Green Lanterns, like the biggest two
Yeah, and I
essentially,
mean, I
with Hal
think
and
Jon
John.
Stewart coming to live action is in a real way. I think is a big move. I think it's a huge thing. I think we've seen so much Hal Jordan content. I mean, we have. Most people haven't, but we have seen so much Hal Jordan content over the years. We obviously have a special place in our heart for Jon Stewart as the Lantern from the Justice League animated series,
Hmm.
and I'm we've talked about this at nauseum in the past about loving his kind of what makes him unique to Hal and how that's visualized differently in the way he built his constructs, etc. Um, I think it's just I think it's really interesting. And I think maybe using the Earth based thing is kind of a slow roll, so you're not throwing people into this like extremely dense mythology of emotional spectrum and all these alien Green Lanterns, etc., all at the same time. And you can kind of avoid that reaction that I heard I'll never forget in the movie theater, which is that looks like shit, or whatever they said when they saw the trailer for the Green Lantern movie. Um, and I think maybe that's the kind of the hedging their bets a little bit is maybe the right choice. Okay, that brings us to Gunn saying that he's going to see what happens regarding Ezra Miller's future as the Flash. And of course, that segues very quickly and easily into the Flash trailer. Now, I'll say before I mention anything about the trailer itself that I was outspoken at the time of when the Batgirl movie was canceled, and that all these other movies were falling like dominoes at Warner Brothers. It was like cancel and well, by the way, meanwhile, Ezra Miller's out there doing the craziest shit you've ever seen or heard of in Hawaii or whatever the hell he was or they were, and I was like, cancel this movie. You've canceled everything else. There's no reason we don't need it. But DC was like, no, it's really good. You trust us. It's good. Don't worry about what Ezra Miller is doing. This is good stuff. You're going to want to see this. And I was like, really? I don't care at this point. I'm over it. Clean slate. Let's cut it loose. No baggage, right? And then I saw the trailer, and I think despite myself, I came out of that trailer saying, you know what? That looks pretty fun. That looks pretty cool. And I think using the kind of like events that we were familiar with, which is funny that we're doing it again because they did it in Batman v Superman, where we saw the events of Man of Steel played out from another perspective. So we're gonna do that again, and this time in a different, alternate way with the events of Man of Steel again. But of course, seeing '89 Batman here, it's exciting. I'm still on the fence about Ezra Miller's portrayal of the Flash. I still don't love it.
You've just been hanging out on a fence.
I don't know. I mean, I just feel like, coming in this, it's like, okay, well, the movie's coming out regardless. It's not going to be canceled now. So I don't know.
This
I'm
movie
excited.
is of a past regime. Remember, this isn't James Gunn's Flash movie.
It's been hacked to shit too.
Yeah, Man of Steel, Zod is back.
Yeah.
They got Michael Shannon to come
Michael
back
Shannon, who could
after
not
that
give a shit.
brilliant performance
in
Man of Steel.
Yeah, what was
his
most recent comment? What was his most comment recently about playing Zod or something? He's like, I don't even remember making that movie or something like that.
I don't know how they got him. Like, they just paid him a shit ton of money to do this. Like,
he's so good. It's so exciting. I mean, to be honest, I'm just excited to see Michael Shannon back. That's
I like to tweet. Someone was like, after watching the Flash trailer, like, now I'll never be able to get Zod's line out of my head from the first movie when he says, "I will find him."
Right.
Like when he screams it.
I think so the thing that's so weird about this is, of course, it's like, oh, Henry Cavill, he got jerked around. We jerked him around. Ugh.
Yeah,
And then we're gonna go and re-explore the events of Man of Steel again.
You can
now
say this
without
movie is
Henry
fun.
Cavill.
Yeah, it's Flash, like for sure. It's a wacky concept. There's time travel. There's the Speed Force. There's versions of him. It's
Cool
all fine
suit.
and dandy. But like this is member berries to the craziest degree. Like it's cool. Like you get to see 89 Batman. He's back. But like I just don't care.
Yeah. I just, like I said, I wanted this to be over with, and if this is what we need to see so that this is all over with, so be it. And if that includes, by the way,
dude, it looks
cameo
his
from
suit looks terrible.
Who? Ezra Miller's
All
or
of them.
I don't know.
Every
They all
suit
look
in this
terrible.
movie looks terrible.
I don't know. The Supergirl suit is
Especially
clearly
the
a
Flash
reference.
suit.
I don't know. I like the one with the yellow lines on it. I kind of like that
so
one.
ugly.
I like the Supergirl suit too. Actually, I think it's like a good redesign. I appreciate. And then, and also, by the way, Supergirl being a presence here is cool, just in and of itself. I think that's awesome. And of course,
yeah, I
Michael
bet
Keaton.
she won't be the Supergirl in the new movie.
You don't know that.
Yeah.
We don't know.
And James is like, yeah, all the actors are open to come back. The door is open.
Well, I mean, but DC
it's like,
has to
but we
open the door.
didn't fire Henry. We just didn't rehire him.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. That's right.
Like the amount of
we just laid you off.
Like James is getting a lot of flack for all these things he's saying, but like for the most part, like nobody like cares. Like, oh yeah, well he can do what he wants. Yeah, well who cares?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. So you didn't care for this trailer. What did the 89 Batman element of it? Did the Michael Keaton
it just
of
threw
it
me
all
right
do
out.
anything
I
for
was
you?
like, this could just be he's coming back for it. Just looked like a Super Bowl commercial ad. Like whenever you saw him, like whenever you saw his face or when he was dressed up in the suit.
It seemed like it was just him back to sell a Visa card.
Yeah,
or
like
something.
like this was a Super Bowl commercial, but it was a movie trailer, but it felt like a Super Bowl commercial for an ad in terms of like a product, like Tide or something.
You felt like he was
gimmicky.
shilling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
I
get
that.
I get it. Like, like there's it's gonna be cool to see him. He's gonna go into the Batcave. You're gonna see the armor. You're gonna see all the suits, which we saw on Twitter, the screen cap, and everyone's dissecting this. Like all that stuff is awesome.
Sure.
There's no way you can take away from that. Just as a movie, what this is doing, what this is playing on, Man of Steel. Ugh.
You're like that was like a decade ago. Like, what do you need?
But it's just like, how dare you? Like leave, just leave that be. It's on a whole other echelon of epic proportions that will
Who do you think's idea was this?
That will stand the test of time. And this Flash movie is just a mess all around, and especially with the drama behind the main actor, who has two versions of himself in this movie. And I don't know, man. It'll be fun. Yeah, they paid millions of dollars for the Super Bowl ad and spent countless hours putting together the best trailer. Like, what? This is a Flash movie trailer, and it was a Batman movie trailer.
Yes, the Batman. Yeah, he appears in.
Ben Affleck is back.
You just feel like this is a slap in the face.
I thought he was done. I thought he was in Batman. He was on Jimmy Kimmel. He says, "I'm not Batman." Is what he said.
Yeah. Well, I guess Jeremy, all you have to do is back up. You back up a Brinks truck full of money, and people will come. Yeah.
And then James Gunn saying Ben Affleck wants to direct one of these movies or something.
Sure.
Which one?
Well, phase 2, Jeremy. That's in phase 2. You don't have to cross that bridge when we get to it. Okay. Yeah. Honestly,
that's chapter 1 on our take on the DCU slate.
Chapter 1, because there's going to be multiple chapters in our takes on this. It's going to evolve.
We covered absolutely everything.
Yeah. So here's what's left on the slate in terms of like the sort of the Elseworlds stories.
Oh yeah, the Batman still exists.
That's the Batman's still coming out. Yep.
Robert Pattinson's still Batman.
Joker, A Folie à Deux, so Joker 2 is still coming. Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom is still coming.
Yesterday, actually, with Gaga and Joaquin.
Yeah, I mean, looks like the sequel to the Joker. The Blue Beetle is still coming. Shazam!
Right.
Fury of the Gods is still coming. Like these
No
are
one
like
cares about that.
who? No. The thing about the Shazam stuff, it just feels like it always has taken place somewhere else and somewhere at another time, and it's not connected to anything. And just kind of like, well, this is fun, but it just
Shazam is like
feels
the Ant-Man
disposable.
movies, but it's just
Yes.
like that's all DC has. It's like that's not good.
uh, it's bad, Julian.
There's 2 Shazam movies now, and it's just not. It's just gonna be It's gonna go away.
Well,
and
it might have been
forgotten
interesting if they had tied it into the Black Adam stuff, which has a natural connection.
Rock
but
said no.
Why would we do that? By the way, I like how they're like, well, maybe the Rock will come back later.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
not. He doesn't have plans for chapter 1, but maybe another chapter. We're not
Yeah,
gonna
maybe.
rule it out.
We'll see.
All
We'll
these
see.
breakups happen, and all these like text.
Hey, time heals all, bro. Time heals all.
Yeah, that was a crazy week though, when like Henry Cavill had to post like
Yeah.
like a whole message. The Rock had to post a whole message.
Yeah,
Because
it's
remember,
like
everyone
yeah.
was shooting their shot, like I was saying. No one was minding the
Chaos.
mint. And when James Gunn was approached for a Superman project, the conversation went differently.
Right.
And he was ahead of everything, all The Rock, everybody. And that's why he was like, "What is Henry Cavill doing?" Announcing that he's back. Why is he in Black? Why is he in 5 seconds at the end of Black Adam? We're doing something different over here.
I just wish that it all comes. I said this before, but I just wish that he didn't do that cameo at the end of Black Adam. It would have been
Correct.
such a cleaner.
He's like, I chose the Man of Steel suit. I felt it represent. Like he's like, I chose that one.
He was like, he just so cute about the whole thing. He's like, yeah, I wanted it to feel right, and then he was like fired a week later, and it's like,
yeah,
what the fuck was the point of all this? Just so we could appease the Rock's ego, and it's like, I just don't. I lost a lot of respect for The Rock throughout this process.
Well,
which is a shame.
The thing is that he does tout the whole listening to fans. He definitely was on the pulse of what the certain what Snyderverse stuff was happening. Because again, everyone was shooting their shot. No one knew what was going on.
Except for Snyder, he was like, "I'm just over here making this Netflix stuff."
The Rock wanted to be at the forefront of it, but what he needed to do was team up with Snyder, if anything.
Right. That would that might have actually worked.
Yeah, imagine a Black Adam movie directed by Snyder. Be completely different.
I can tell you'd be better. I can tell you, couldn't be much worse. We'll just put it there. They might have actually got a good performance out of The Rock. What a concept. Anyway, so some good, some bad.
Yeah.
I think mostly exciting. There's some ugly in there. I mean, we don't know yet. Who knows? Maybe like.
Yeah, but we're pretty positive though. Like even I am,
so.
right? Obviously, a huge Snyderverse fan, and would rather see that continue. But you have to change. You have to move with what's going on. Yeah. And Gunn is he's come up with something, and he knows these characters. His story is king. So let's see what he's got. Essentially.
Yeah, I mean, worst case scenario, it fails miserably. Mm-hmm. And they start everything all over again, round 2. And of course, the other thing we have to look forward to, which is fun,
it's Constantine too.
No, I was gonna say the castings. We get to get excited about who's gonna play who, and that's always fun.
Anson Mount, Bruce Wayne / Batman.
I don't know. I'll have to think about that one.
Oh, just kidding.
That's the thing. It's like we're casting a young Superman. I think that one's the hardest one, to be honest. I think that one comes with the most baggage. But there's
also rumors that Batman needs to be old now too, which is hilarious because that's what we got with Affleck.
Yeah, we don't need Batman to be old. You can
have. The thing is, if the Bat family is a thing, or you know what I mean, he kind of has to have some years on him.
Hand wave it away. I don't know. Put him in a Lazarus pit. I don't know. Like, what do you
Yeah.
Anyway. All right, I got to run. But this was good. Here's what we got on tap because we need to do another episode of this soon. I'm going to Raleigh, but I'm trying to make time for podcasting while I'm there over the next 2 weeks. Of course, we'll still be doing Bad Batch episodes. There was a really good 2-part episode last week, the week before last. That was just unbelievable. Like an hour of animated Star Wars movie, basically. That was. Basically, like, what if they did the prequels but good? And it was a really, really, like, stunningly good. So look for more of that coverage. That's going to continue with the Small Screen Star Wars offshoot show. On tap for more, TOB global content. Tom Holland has returned as Spider-Man to the MCU, so we may want to talk about that a little bit. It was not necessarily surprising, but it's good to hear about that. They're rethinking how they want to do television, which is also really interesting. It's amazing what Bob Iger can do. He can lay off 5,000 people, and he can announce Toy Story 5, which is a movie I don't think anyone wanted. I think you're right. It was a lot of.
And
people.
They wanted to save like $50 billion. What was it? Something like some
$50
stupid
billion.
number doesn't make any sense.
It's so wild. Ask Warner Brothers how trying to save a bunch of money is working out for them. AMC announced seat location variable pricing. That's a kick in the ass. Not a fan of that. Netflix password sharing is coming to Canada. So if you American listeners, lucky you, you're avoiding it for now. But we can give you a kind of a rundown how that's going. Short answer, not great. There's trailers for the Fast X movie. There was more Transformers trailers. There was a trailer for Guardians 3. A lot of that to talk about. And of course, more importantly than all of that is we need to catch up on our thoughts on The Last of Us, which is going to be going into its 5th week this week. It's already halfway done, basically. So, there's lots to talk about there, and we'll get back to it sooner than later. Again, apologies on the delay for getting a kind of a numbered episode out. We'll try to be better at that. Anyway, that's all to say. Thank you for listening. Follow us on Twitter at Tower Babblecast, Facebook.com/Tower Babblecast, and head over to the website, towerbabbl.ca, to find everything we do. And we'll be back very soon with more TOB.